Greetings, heathens and heretics, and welcome to the second in our In the Abyss reviews episodes. Joining myself in the voice of reason this week, though, is everyone's favourite lefty tub thumper, fresh from an announcement of a rather tasty little support slot with the Obsessed Beandog. Nice that. Before we get into the review, that's a nice little touch.
Yeah, hello everyone. That's a great bit of news. Yeah. Really looking forward to that. I think that came together really quickly. Actually, that was our man Davey. I think just put the word out, and I don't think we necessarily expected to hear anything back. You know, it's just one of those ones where you kind of cast the net and see if anything comes in. And yeah, we got the email saying come down and play as us, Urne, and the Obsessed, Camden Underworld, 3rd of October. I can't wait. I mean, what a gig. I've been listening to the Obsessed since. Do you remember Noisy Mothers?
Yeah.
They used to be on heavy rotation on Noisy Mothers, and that was was it the Church Within album? And I remember going to track that down after staying up all night watching them on that.
Yeah, look, it's that's a quality one. That will I'll do my best to get down to that, but look, that's enough plugging your riffs. Let's talk about other riffs. So we had the we were lucky enough to pick up an advanced copy of this before it drops on August the 11th. So this is A Feast on Sorrow by Urne, a band that we love on this podcast anyway. The first album's great, and I've been me personally, I've been looking forward to this album an awful lot. And obviously we had a chat with Joe a few weeks back. We talked about the album and what to expect from it. So I went cap in hand to say, can we get an early go on the album so we can review it. So here we are. Thanks to Joe for sorting that out. And hopefully we kind of do it justice. I've got a glass of wine because it feels like that kind of album. I think it accompanies a glass of wine. I don't know if you agree, but it's got that kind of feel.
I think it's just you're just getting old.
Well, I'm also on holiday after tomorrow, so I'm already in holiday mode, and I've been all week. So it's a bottle of wine every week. But there you go. Every night, every week, every night. Anyway, I'll stop waffling. So, like I said, the album A Feast on Sorrow comes out on August the 11th via candlelight. 2 singles have dropped so far, which have been well received to say the least. But let's get through the album. We've all had, 2 of us have had a really good few listens to it. The Voice of Reason's had a brief affair with it.
Dalliance.
Yeah, that's what a word. What a great word. The album's eight tracks long. It's 55 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a couple of long old songs in there, a couple of 11-minute songs, one of which we'll get to in a minute is going to be released as the 3rd single, which in itself is quite bold, brazen, if you will. But the album kicks off with a song called The Flood Came Rushing In. And straight away, you can hear how Urne have moved forward from Serpent and Spirit. It's a very different approach to me. The first couple of minutes are essentially, or the first minute or so is essentially thrash before that sort of traditional Urne style riff kicks in. Bean, what did you think? First song in?
Well, I mean,
early impressions.
Just before I talk about that track, just going back to what you were saying about the production and the move on there. I'll just talk a little bit about, because as you said, there's 2 singles that have dropped. So just to go back a bit, when that first single, Becoming the Ocean, came out, it set me off on a bit of a shaky start with this album. Now bear with me though, because there's a happy ending to this story.
Tangents, God, no.
So the song came out. I gave it a listen, obviously, because I was a huge fan of the previous album, Serpent and Spirit. It was kind of one of those records that I was chewing everyone's ear off about to listen to. I really, really liked it. So there's a lot of anticipation for the single, and then when it came out, like immediately, I could hear the difference in the production.
Yeah.
And my first thought was a little bit like that scene in Wayne's World where they get bought out and then they're on the new improved version of their show and the theme kicks in and it's all kind of glitzy and And I sort of, wow, this sounds like it's a very international production sound is what I would, that's kind of what my first thought was. And I was a little bit worried that some of that kind of Britishness and quirkiness might have been pushed out. So when we got our hands on the album and I pushed play, like, I'm happy to say all of that went completely out the window in the first seconds of the album. It just grabbed me straight away. And I think like that opening line where Joe just kind of bellows, "Where do the memories go?" And he just sets up the stall from the off and just becomes, obviously the reoccurring theme for the album. And even before we've got into the music, just thinking about that line and all the press that's come out before the release of this, and they describe it as a stark rumination on the grim inevitabilities of disease, dementia, and deterioration in old age. And I kind of was thinking about that, with that idea of dementia and getting old and deterioration, and that kind of, where do all the memories go? Instantly you're drawn into this place and this state of thinking. And then the track just kicks off and it's absolutely fucking savage. I mean, that first riff is deranged. It reminded me a little bit of Cannibal Corpse, actually, just purely on the guitars. But great. I mean, they just give you everything in that first song. They're kind of setting out their stall pretty much everywhere this album's going to go and the different things it does. It's got those frantic moments. It's got those slower, solid kind of groovy parts. And then it's got these huge epic bits. They're really giving you a taste of kind of everything in that first song. So I appreciate it for that.
Yeah, it's it surprised me a little bit because the first minute or so is so fast. And then when that riff kicks in at about minute 15, and it's just a huge crushing riff. And yeah, I completely agree with you. It just sets out the rest of the album from that point onwards. And yeah, there's plenty of sort of more proggy bits and things like that. But it's just instantly, I find it very hard to describe. And I said it to Joe when he was on the podcast that when I first heard Urne, while they don't necessarily sound like them, it gave me the same kind of feeling as when I first heard Mastodon.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a band that are kind of coming out of nowhere a little bit. You don't expect, considering, background Hang the Bastard and things like that, you don't expect this band to sound like this. And the first song on this album reiterates that point. It's the same thing again. Didn't see it coming at all.
No, they in fact, a band I think about a lot, where certainly when I listen to Serpent and Spirit, I thought about Metallica a lot, but like them at their most epic, like And Justice for All, Master of Puppets, that kind of era.
Yeah.
Where you just have these changing themes and these kind of episodic structures to the songs, where they'll change often and just take things off on a curveball, occasionally bring it back, sometimes not. Sometimes a riff will happen and that's it. That's the only time they visit that. And that occurs quite a lot through this album, which is probably something we talk about as we kind of maybe move through and touch on some of the other songs.
Yeah, I mean, strong start to say the least. I mean, and you only managed to listen to it a couple of times, really. Well, what are the sort of initial impressions going into the early part of the album?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the comparisons you've made with Mastodon and I suppose more progressive elements of metal certainly stood out for me. I think what becomes very clear from that first track and from the start is that you can't pigeonhole this band.
No.
You can't call them thrash or death or black or anything. They're metal. They're absolutely metal, but you can't go more than that. And that's what I like straight off, because it's there's almost this. Well, there is this unique quality that, like, we're playing metal, we're doing it our way. It's going to remind you of other bands, but also this is just us. We're not. Yeah, they are just Urne. And you got some twists and turns there, and you've got a chorus there which isn't a chorus and is somewhat out of place with the song. I think in how the vocals are harmonized. Yeah, in the flip side, it kind of works because again, it's sort of unexpected, which straight away from the whole that first song, you're thinking, yeah, it is expected unexpected. So yeah, I mean, you're definitely interested from that point, like where they're going to go next, and it's pretty clear that there's going to be a journey, and it's not going to just be a bish bash bosh. Here's some songs. It's gonna require effort, but it's going to be managed. It's going to be not easy effort, but you're going to want to make that effort.
Yeah, it draws you in right from the start, doesn't it? I think that's the big thing I get from it. Look, before we go into more of the album, I think we need to talk about the fact that at the end of the day, Urne are a 3-piece, and the sound that's generated on this album, you can hear all 3 elements. Well, 4 if you include the vocals. Everything comes through the production just really, really clear. Angus's guitar work just sounds awesome all the way through the album, and you just hear, you can almost hear him picking at the strings, if that makes sense. It's got that kind of clarity.
Absolutely, and that's where I had to eat my hat. We come to talking about my sort of kind of trepidation around the production. It is lovely, just as you said, there's clarity there. You can hear the air in the room, and that's kind of always been one of my benchmarks of like good production. I like it when it sounds like a band or a group of musicians playing their instruments in a room, and you can hear that room vibrating. You can hear the air moving around, like you said. You can hear the kind of the scrape on the strings and bits like that. And there's a wonderful moment at the end of To Die Twice, where Angus plays that like acoustic kind of classical influenced just outro to the song, which is probably the first moment on this album where I actually thought, oh wow, this is really going somewhere. Like, this has got a lot to offer. And I mean, that track in general, I think, was an early highlight for me, actually. To Die Twice is probably the one track. It kind of sucks you in. It sets the mood of the rest of the album.
Yeah.
It's really dark. It's a really kind of ominous, the weight of despair is all the way through that song.
That outro to it it's haunting, and I think is the word for it.
I mean, this might be an odd comparison, but obviously in metal we used to bleakness and darkness and the black metal trees and whatnot and the weirdness, and I get a different vibe from this. I think maybe the album cover is a bit of it's kind of created a vibe for me, but there is a sort of a very British kind of bleakness here, which feels somewhat Dickensian. And maybe it's just where I am at the moment, being near the sea. But there's that vibe that it just feels suitably again British and not like the bleakness you get from Scandinavian bands. Can't really describe it very well, but there's something there.
It all comes from the inside, I don't, you talk about the kind of bleak, black metal and things like that. It's all about the environment. We think of forests and caves and harsh places and icy tundras and all that kind of stuff. For me, this album, it's probably the most sincerely human metal album I've heard in a long time. I mean, it's got some really deep stuff coming from a very real place. It's about being a human, and I think that image you talked about, the cover, that image of the wave, really it captures the the kind of expanse and the freedom of the sea, but also the power it has to destroy. And that really sums up the mood of this album, I think. All of that stuff wrestling against each other.
Well, there's a couple of songs on this that are north of 10 minutes long. The first one that comes along is the third track in A Stumble of Words, which, like I said earlier, is going to be the third single. It's got very kind of low-key intro to it before it moves into, the first kind of groove-based part of this album. It makes me think of Physical Graffiti era Zeppelin. It's sort of quite grandiose, quite almost symphonic in the way it comes in, and then Joe's vocals kick in, and it's just, again, that intensity just jumps up several levels before, without you even seeing it coming.
Yeah, it's the first song on the album that feels a little lighter. It's kind of like I jotted down, it's like the first song you could probably take to the gym with you, because it's got a bit of a bounce to it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's not to do a disservice to the tune, because it's, you know, there's a lot more going on than just kind of than that. But yeah, it just settles into this kind of bouncy fist pump of a riff and just strides forward. And again, this is probably the first song that has that really gets into that episodic, you know, I think there's about sort of 4 or 5 sections to it that it passes through, and it's kind of one of those tracks that reminds me of you know, how Metallica used to approach songs back in the day, or you know, even a lot of the stuff on Serpent and Spirit.
What's clear from the album, I think, by the end of this particular track, is this is not, again, it's a journey. We don't have songs, the songs aren't written from a point of sort of writing a traditional song or being chorus led. There is a journey behind it, and I think there's a big lack of choruses on this album, but you don't really notice that until you're finished. Because again, you've got so much going on, and all these different riffs and different chapters, so to speak, are, you know, they take up the space and they keep you engaged. But yeah, there's no choruses, and that's fine.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
It's like it almost doesn't need it. I mean, you know, a stumble of words, about 7 minutes in, it goes fucking pure evil almost, and for about 20 seconds, Joe sounds like he's possessed. It's just all these twists and turns. The drumming in the second half of this, like something Igor Cavallero would have been proud of. It is just absolutely savage. Stunning piece of work.
It's about, I kind of, that middle section you talked about, there's no light in that middle section at all. You know, it's all darkness. And then the last minute of the song, it just drives double bass drums going. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah,
real highlight.
Yeah, and to drop this song as a single is bold, to say the least. But you know what? It will grab people, I think, because there is so much going on, and it's like 3 or 4 different songs in one hit. So it will catch people's attention. And if you're already a fan of the band anyway, it's just going to add to that. But following that, you got the couple of singles, The Burden and Becoming the Ocean. We've talked about Becoming the Ocean already. You know, we most people who are going to be listening to this review are probably familiar with those songs. Following on from that, then you've got the title track, The Feast on Sorrow, which has got this wonderful piano intro that was done by Joe Duplantier, who produced the album from Gojira. And then just bang, this riff just kicks in straight after it. And I've got, you know, you think of all the great songs you've had over the years. You think about things like Fight Fire with Fire by Metallica. You've got that sort of delicate intro, Beneath the Remains by Sepultura, and then a massive sort of riff kicks in. That art of contrast, you can never beat that. It always works. If it siegs in right, it works a treat, and it definitely works here.
Yeah, for me, this song, I think Joe Nally's vocal performance on this song is absolutely incredible. Like it's as if he's possessed by this character. Like he's playing the role of like almost this kind of like I think of like the Grim Reaper, you know, or some sort of biblical figure that's, you know, embodies hopelessness. And, you know, he talks in the lyrics, he talks about I am the flesh, I am the blood, but he does it with this menacing delivery. I mean,
that's in my notes, that I am flesh, I am blood.
I am death,
line.
I am merciless.
Yeah.
And it's all delivered in this voice that's coming from another place. Like you know, to his credit, Joe does a lot of creative things with his voice on this album. You know, everybody actually on this album is supremely creative. You know, that comes through the guitars, all the instrumentation, the arrangements, the vocals. But on this song particularly, there's a gear that he hits, or a voice that he uses, which just sounds pure evil, and I love it. I absolutely love this song. It kind of, and the tempo of it. The other thing I thought is it sounds like it's kind of a conveyor belt to hell. It's like it's got this real ominous, you're just rolling along towards this kind of inevitable doom. It's a really powerful song.
Yeah, massively. I love that term, a conveyor belt to hell, like a modern day highway to hell. It's
yeah, there you go. Yeah.
I think we should touch a little bit on Joe's clean vocals, because when he was on the podcast, he mentioned that especially live, it's the one thing that he kind of struggles with confidence on, because screaming into a microphone is one thing, but when you're clean singing, you're a lot more vulnerable than, aren't you? You're putting yourself out there, your potential flaws, all of that. It's a completely different world, and I think the clean vocals that are intertwined through this album, they're in the right places and they work, and it's not, he's not sort of going beyond his limits. Everything fits where it should. It's not, you go back to sort of, no comparison, but you go back to the metalcore days and that forced clean singing chorus. This album kind of gives you proof that you can do it right, the harsh vocal, clean vocal combination.
Yeah, and there's vulnerability in those clean vocals as well, and I think that's why they work so well. That's crucial. I think that if they were delivered any other way, it wouldn't be as effective as it is. Given the themes of this album, and I think the personal nature of this album, there's a real, whenever, if there is a slight crack in the voice or anything like that, that just makes it all the more human. It's a much stronger album for that as well. It really works.
But I think part of that is because they're not following a template. So many clean vocals, since those early noughties metalcore days, there's a template there. There's a structure and how they approach their songs, and they might be good at what they do, but it's predictable, and Urne don't follow a template on this album whatsoever.
No.
So it feels completely authentic. I know we use that word a lot, but it does. It's just using that appropriately.
There's a thought I had while I was listening. It's like going to a restaurant and having food cooked by a master chef. Okay, the ingredients that he uses are the stuff that everyone has in their cupboard. And as a metal fan, people are going to recognize the different elements of this, halftime bits, kind of palm muted chugging, big epic choruses. They're all there. We'll all recognize those parts, but they've been, brought together and used with such good taste and such understanding of what works, that it just sounds fresh and it sounds new.
There's a deconstruction there, isn't there?
Yeah. So it's not, and this isn't a criticism, there's nothing new or surprising on this album, but it's just been, like you said, deconstructed and rearranged and put together in such a way where it just sounds fresh and exciting.
And that's something we crave as metal fans. We all know that it's great to have leather and studs and early 80s sounding trad metal, which I'm all over at the minute, but every now and then you hear a band that just sort of is doing something with all those elements, but just doing something new with it. And
I remember back in the day, we went to see Donnie Darko at the cinema. These were the days where we went to. I worked at the cinema. We went to see a bunch of us went to see a film each week with my free tickets. Just that was it. So many films, so many god awful films around that time we saw. And we saw Donnie Darko that evening, and then we went back to your place, and we must have briefly sat in silence, just absorbing it, and then we spent probably about an hour talking about that film, analysing it and going into the detail. And I kind of get that same sort of feeling where you've got to just think about it.
Absolutely. On that point, I put it on this afternoon and it finished. I had exactly that moment. I had to go out for a walk. I took myself out and kind of went walking, just around town, around the block, but just ruminating on it, just thinking about it, just letting certain parts of it settle in and trying to work out what I felt and what I connected with. It's a really good example, actually. Yeah, it has that, definitely.
So right after that, you've got Peace then, which is a bit of an interlude. After all that sort of intensity, the first 6 songs, and it's just fun. You've got this sort of delicate interlude, some distant vocals in the background. There's some sort of low key guitar work as well. Again, it adds to the sort of general bleakness of the album, but it just brings everything down a level before you get to the closing song, which I think we're all in agreement is one hell of a closing fucking track. The Long Goodbye, Where Do the Memories Go?
What's interesting about this song, actually, for me, despite what I've said, is it's recognizable. It feels like an album closer in how the song is structured into, I think, two distinct parts, where you've got that interesting unpredictability to begin with, but then it winds down, and there's a sort of triumphant sort of approach as it goes, as it slows down towards the end. But that's fine for me, because it's like, well, you know what, they more than earned the right to do something that's almost familiar, and maybe at the end of an album where you've been on these journeys, it's like, you know what, I just want to settle down now, and it works as a balance to everything else.
It's look, listening to this song, I hear elements of Justice for All. Yeah, I'm hearing just good old classic rock guitar. There's a riff guitars just after 4.5 minutes that is just incredible.
There's harmonized guitars on this track. So
just on the point of guitars, I mean, riffs aside, the solos are incredible.
Yeah.
Angus just has the things he's doing, the way he's layering the guitars up, the way he's using different sounds, the way the aggression in the riffs, sort of set against the melodic solos and melody lines that are coming through. He's wearing so many different hats on this album. It's really impressive.
Yeah, I agree. It's like we've said, listen, going through the entire album, there's so much that comes at you when you're not expecting it. But at the same, like you've both said, it's all elements of metal that we're all familiar with, but they're doing something completely different with it. They've taken it, they've mixed it up, and just given us something completely different. I mean, you talk about guitar solos, the guitar solo in this track, The Long Goodbye, Where Do the Memories Go, about 9 minutes in, it is just incredible. I hope to God they play this song live. I think I like to think it would be a set closer at some point, because it's just got that massive finish. I think it will sound amazing. Headline dates, hour or so, stuff like this is going to sound incredible.
Yeah, no, I agree. On that last song, actually, briefly, I just wanted to talk about Peace for a moment. I know I'm rewinding slightly, but I think it would be easy to dismiss that. But listening today, I had some headphones on, and I was reminded of when Joe was on the podcast, where you were interviewing him on the podcast, and he talked about traveling around and recording the subway and recording sounds of of New York, and that's all in Peace. Like, if you listen, you can hear those noises kind of drifting in and out of the background, and it really struck me as a powerful moment. These are sounds of life, and this album really is, as I understand it, about the end of life. So these the sounds you can hear, it's like the sounds of a life lived, and I just found that quite poignant and quite meaningful. And it's a minute's worth of music that just sort of drifts in. They return to this "Where Do Our Memories Go" refrain, which they really then bring back in for the climax at the end of the album. So back to the last track, which I thought would like, as a comparison, I think that last track would really sound at home on 72 Seasons. It's really got that sort of metallic power, the sort of thing we heard earlier in the year with Metallica.
I think going through the journey of the album, it feels like Peace is the point where the story comes to an end, and then that last track is the memories of everything that's come before it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Guys, I've gone down on it.
Someone's interrupting. How rude. But yeah, that's the feeling I get. It's almost like that's the point where everything comes to an end, and that last 11 minutes is the kind of memories of everything that came before it. It's a long time since I've had that level of thought from a metal album that I've kind of got that deep into, that I've actually really thought about what's going on, kind of thing, without just loving the riffs and whatever. It just goes far deeper than that.
Well, I think it's going to appeal to people on different levels, on many levels, I should say. Like, on the first hand, on the surface of it, it's just a great fucking album with great riffs, great moments. It's just really well put together. It sounds fantastic. The songwriting is world class. So they're ticking all the boxes there. But I think, there's another level to it, and you can, it's got a theme that's consistent, that runs through the whole thing. I think people are going to relate to that in different ways. And I think if you've been through a bereavement or experience the themes that the album really gets into, I think it's going to hit you on a completely different level as well.
Yeah, I agree. And like you just said, take away from the fact everything we've been talking about, it's just a fucking great metal album.
100%.
Exactly what you said. It's got the riffs, it's got the vocals, it's got the songs, the solos, that fucking drumming. It's just a fucking great metal album.
It gives good crunch.
Oh, proper crunch. Captain fucking crunch.
Captain Crunch. There you go.
And you know what? Look, I've said it on a couple of previous episodes, where we are so far this year and all the great albums, that a massive chunk of my favorite albums this year are British. And this goes straight to the top of the pile. It really does. And it's so good to see that all these British bands of varying levels all the way up through are just delivering such incredible material at the moment. And we are spoiled for choice. Look, what more can we say?
What are we giving it? What are we giving it? A thumbs up?
Well, I think it just about gets a thumbs up. Yeah,
2 thumbs up.
Yeah. How do you quantify these things? I guess you just don't. You just I think we've said all there is to say.
Yeah, it's easy to give it a score out of 11 and whatever, but we've got rules, when it comes to reviewing albums and sort of perfect albums and this kind of thing. But I think in current times and everything that's been released in the last, I don't know, 10, 20 years, this is one of the finest. I think it's that fucking good. I struggle to see it being top this year.
I agree. It's gone straight to the top of my list. I think one of the crucial things I would say is I want to listen to it again. Like, a lot of music has come out and it's kind of passed through. But what I mean by that
that's
is
the point.
I just want to listen again.
It's one I feel like, right, I want to sit with this some more. I want to give it some time. I want to, it's not just that was cool. Yeah, I enjoyed that. Right, what's next? This is one. It's like, okay, I really enjoyed that. I want to set it to one side. I want to spend more time with it. Already I've given it a few plays through, and everyone has reviewed. It's a bit of a cliche, but every listen has brought something new. I've noticed something that I enjoy about it. It's got layers. It's got layers. I want to spend time with it, and I think that's a really good sign.
I think you need to take it out to dinner first before you get too much closer.
Oh, listen,
do the gentlemanly thing at least.
Yeah, completely. I mean, we're talking at least 3 dates.
Well, yeah, it's definitely a 3 date. Yeah, take it home to your parents. It's that kind of thing, isn't it?
Oh, steady on. Hang on. Whoa.
We love this album. We kind of knew we were going to love this album anyway, and it's tricky when expectations are high. You don't want to get let down.
And you know what? South London.
South fucking London.
South fucking London. There you go. I'm happy.
I'm a Croydon boy at heart, so I'll say yes to that.
Well, I'm further south than any of you, but yeah, that's a different conversation. Look, just to sum it up, it's a stunning album. It's very hard to quantify just by talking about it as a group of songs, as you would do with a lot of metal albums. There's so much more going on. If you're already a fan of Urne, you will love this album. If you're not already a fan of Urne, listen to this album and give it the time it deserves, because I think over the next 12 to 18 months, the sky's the limit now. They got the right backing behind them and they get the right opportunities. They've just done arenas with Gajira, and no doubt they've picked up a huge number of new fans off the back of that. So,
you know what? You can see him support Metallica.
Yeah, 100%. I can see that working, definitely.
Yeah.
It's and you can't really get any better than that, And Joe's a huge Metallica fan, so it would be the ultimate accolade, wouldn't it? You take your band that you never think you're going to go anywhere with, and all of a sudden, bosh, you support Metallica. It would be very much deserved.
Yeah, I sincerely hope that happens for them.
So yeah. So it's out on August the 11th. We'll all be at Bloodstock on the day it drops. They are playing Saturday at Bloodstock around about midday, 1 o'clock-ish, something like that. So anybody who's going, I'm pretty sure there will be a big crowd and I think there'll be a really good walk up for that one. And I think even those who aren't familiar with them and are walking around the arena, they're going to hear those riffs and they're going to, interest is going to kind of peak and it's going to be all, oh yeah, I like the sound of that. And by the time they finish, there's going to be a big fucking crowd. So really looking forward to that. And hopefully we'll get some fucking headline shows later this year as well. That would be nice.
Oh, more gigs. I can't do more gigs.
All the gigs, all the time. Fucking just lap it up. Let's have it.
God.
I've even got to go and see The Grudge again now that they're playing with the Obsessed. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, look, that's it. We love the album. Buy it, listen to it, get the vinyl. It's not on cassette, thankfully. CD, download, all of that. Get involved, and you won't regret it. This will be it for us for a couple of weeks while we're at Bloodstock. I think we will be due back middle of August with a review of Bloodstock, and hopefully we're all still alive and still nursing hangovers and stomach problems and hopefully not sunstroke like it was last year. So
trench foot.
Or yeah, one or the other. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, listening to that, and yeah, thanks for listening to this, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks. Stay metal.